And I have that. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order for Tuesday, 19 October 2021 at 7:30 a.m. I'm going to confirm member access. As a preliminary matter, this is Robert Holland, the Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations SELCO Commission Chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Tony Trippi.
See, aye.
Maria Lemieux.
Here.
Mike Ruffolo.
Here.
And Matt Beaton. I'm not expecting Matt to be in attendance today, and I hear not hearing anything. That's a good assumption. And Robert Holland. Okay, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Christopher Roy, SELCO General Manager.
Here.
Kathy Ryba, Administrative Assistant.
Here.
Ralph Iacarino, Director of Engineering and Operations.
Here.
Joelle Malavar, the Director of Broadband Technologies.
Here.
Jackie Pratt, Director of Integrated Resources and Communications. Nothing heard. Greg Honorado, Director of Information Technology. Nothing heard. Jonathan Malavar, Senior Engineer.
Here.
Okay. Patrick Collins, Integrated Resources Analyst.
Here.
Tracy Schultz, Human Resources Coordinator.
Here.
Jim Zacco, Director of Finance and Administration.
Here.
Scott Stark, Line Supervisor. Scott, I know you're there. I think you might be muted.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Megadeep Sarapali, Field Engineer.
Here.
Okay. Introduction to remote meeting. Good morning. This open meeting of the SELCO Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Senate Bill 2475, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. Suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 18. This meeting of the SELCO Commission will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, SELCO Commission is convening by Google Meet as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For everyone participating, please mute yourselves unless you're talking, and please, or if you're on a cell phone, please be sure to press *6 to mute your device. This meeting will not feature public comment. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. And I'd like to thank Mark Serra and the SMC team for video support. We're taping this show and we'll broadcast over the next few weeks on SMC. With that said, I'd like to go to the agenda, and by the way, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:30. Review and consider and approve bill schedules and warrants. To the board members, in a roll call, just to verify if anybody has any questions on any of the bills or warrants. Mr. Trippi.
No question.
Ms. Lemieux.
I have just one comment and one question. There were a lot of, well, first the question. There were a lot of refunds. I just want to know what prompted all the refunds this month. And the second was, and I know Mike will bring this up later, there was a Miracle O'Connell bill in one of these in the first set of warrants that.
Yeah, Mike can't vote on it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mike, Mr. Ruffolo?
Yeah, for the Myrick bills, usually we had to have a separate warrant for whatever reason. That was the process. But I have no other questions.
Let's see. Mr. Zacco, can you explain why there were a number of rebates or refunds?
So I'd have to look into that more to get back to you, but I believe that is just probably cleaning up our customers' accounts. From my experience, when people leave, they sometimes duplicate pay, past due bills and all of that type of, or I should say last bills, they duplicate pay, things like that. So my assumption is, without looking into it further, this is just, our monthly, scan, who do we have, credits on accounts, and getting that back to them.
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. Do I have a motion to accept the bills and warrants as presented?
So moved.
And I'll second it. Roll call on the warrants, and I understand, Mr. Ruffolo, you'll recuse yourself on the one with the lawyers. Mr. Trippy,
Yes.
Ms. Lemieux,
Yes.
Mr. Ruffolo.
Yes, with recusal.
Okay, and Bob Holland, yes. Okay, then we move on to the next. Review and consider approval of meeting minutes of September 28th, 2021. Roll call of the board to see if anybody has any comments on those minutes. Mr. Trippy,
No comment.
Ms. Lemieux,
No comment.
Mr. Ruffolo,
No comments.
and I have no comments. Do you have a motion to accept the minutes of September 28th, 2021?
So moved for those meeting
Okay,
minutes.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Ruffolo, thank you. Roll call and acceptance of the minutes of September 28th, 2021. Mr. Trippy,
Yes.
Ms. Lemieux,
Yes.
Mr. Ruffolo,
Yes.
and Bob Holland, yes. Moving on to the next, review financial statements of August 2021. Mr. Roy, I think it was Mr. Zucco going to present those?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Zucco, the floor is yours.
Okay. So just taking a look here, we have our August income statement we're going to take a look at today. From a budget to month perspective, in operating revenue, we're about 1% over plan, or above plan, I should say. And from operating income, we are about 36% below plan. Looking at net income, we're 37% below plan. And when we look at our budget year-to-date numbers for operating revenue, we're 3% above plan. Our operating income is about 60% above plan, and our net income is about 68% above plan. Currently, for this month, we are, or as of this month, year to date, we are about a 9% return on plant, which is about 1% above our target, but we do expect that number to go down by the end of the year. Taking a look at the year-over-year comparison, and this is basically looking at the same month today as last year. We look at our operating revenue is 15% below previous year. Our operating income is 65% below previous year, and our net income is 66% below previous year. Bringing that year to date, we have an operating revenue of 2% below the previous year. Operating income is 13% below, and net income is 11%. To take a deeper dive into this, I wanted to look at, the preponderance of this operating income month over month or year over year is made up by operating revenue. So I did just a little bit of a deep dive, taking a look at, this year compared to last year in operating revenue over the months. And you can see August is the big month that we have a difference. Taking a look kind of at the budget, last year's August was well above plan. I tried to dive into this and take a look at why this might be. And the best assumption I can come up with is it's most likely COVID related. In August 2020, we really had, a lot of people still working from home. So the largest increase I saw was about 87%, and it came from residential rates. That would make sense with this as well. Last August, a lot of people normally would take vacations, and my assumption is they did not. Just based on you have more people at home, all of those type of things. But when I checked other factors like weather, there was nothing that kind of showed this. But I just wanted to call this out as that's kind of why we see that large kind of variance. Jumping down into the cable side of things, when we look at our operating revenue from a monthly budget, we're 2% above plan. Our operating income is 6% above plan, and our net income is 1% above plan. Jumping over year to date, our operating revenue is 2% above plan. Our operating income is 24% above plan, and our net income is 19% above plan. And that is the I'm sorry. Jumping down to the last slide I have, we have our year-over-year comparison again. Our operating revenue is 2% above plan. Our operating income is flat, and our net income is 9% below the previous year. Year-to-date numbers, we're looking at an operating revenue of 3% increase, operating income of 3% increase, and a net income decrease of 4%. Everything so far looks to be good, and that's kind of our financials for August. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Any of the board members have any questions? I'll do a roll. Mr. Trippy?
No, I do not, no.
Okay, Ms. Lemieux?
Jim, what's the other deductions?
The other deductions breaks out into a couple other things. I'd have to dive into some of the files to see what it exactly is. Would you like to know from a cable and electric perspective, or just one or the other?
Well, I was just looking at the cable numbers, and it just seems like the 224,000, like what that's made up of, just because we're getting below where we planned,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like net income, and so it seems like that may be a significant factor. I was just wondering what it was.
Let me just dive in quickly and see if I can.
Because we didn't even budget. Looking at the budget, we only budgeted 95, and it's 224, 225 almost.
So for other deductions, we have interest expense on the long-term debt and debt amortization.
Okay.
Is what that is made up of. And I'd have to dive deeper into it if you wanted more of an
No,
explanation.
I was just wondering what it was. That's all.
Okay.
But
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ruffolo, any questions?
No comments.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the financial statements as presented?
Motion to accept.
Okay, second?
Second?
Okay, roll call vote to approve or accept the financial statements for August of 2021. Mr. Trippy?
Yes.
Ms. Lemieux?
yes.
Mr. Ruffolo?
Yes.
And Bob Holland, yes. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item 5, review and vote on the winter generation and transmission rate adjustment. Mr. Roy, who's going to lead the charge on this one?
I can start us out, and then Jackie could jump in with anything I miss, if that's all right.
Okay, thank you.
So with the generation and transmission adjustment, I guess just as a quick overview for a refresher, perhaps, or anyone that might view this and not have a familiarity with the GTA. So GTA essentially is our mechanism to reconcile past power supply costs, as well as incorporate future power supply forecasts. Therefore, implementing kind of a smoothing effect for rates that could be very choppy with respect to the markets regarding fuel and transmission and and the other relevant power supply expenses. So in the memo here, we just detailed a little bit of the history. But the important thing that I kind of wanted to highlight with the GTA, and I may slip up and call it a PCA. There are different terminology for the same mechanism for rate smoothing, but dating back to 2014, we've had this GTA in place, and so how this dovetails with a lot of the initiatives we've talked about and that we're going to incorporate moving forward is heavily impacted by the power supply policy we've implemented. So looking back, and dovetailing with the financials that Jim just presented, we look back and it's a basic mathematical formula to true up the power supply costs we incur. And so that's one part, and typically the historical methodology for implementing a GTA But I think the key component, especially moving forward with all the changes in the power supply world, is the forward look. And so this year, especially the fall cycle, is particularly important because we still have a component of our power supply that is natural gas. And so with that natural gas component, there's often significant fluctuations in price. And so we implement the GTA to try and do our best guess with the market analysis as to where that market will go. And some of that we'll touch upon in the general manager highlights agenda item. And so that's a major contributor, and we do our best to forecast that out. That way, when it comes to the spring, we don't have to do this, a large retroactive adjustment. Again, having, with the interest of keeping rates stable. The other component that lends itself to a new form of power supply fluctuation are the renewable energy credits or certificates. And so, basically in summary, if you see with our attached spreadsheets, you can see that this is the traditional mechanism for calculating the GTA or PCA. And so if you look on the very last page, the last line in the summary calculation shows the possibility of offering an 8 mil, if you will, 0.008 credit to bills, which incorporates the reconciliation of the past and the forward look with even with the gas line constraints that we predict will happen through the winter. Now, it's important to keep in mind as well that that gas line constraint is really only impacting 20% of our portfolio, as the other 80% is hedged. And so even with that 20%, there can still be significant fluctuations. But with our recommendation here, it would be to keep our current GTA of 4 mils level funded, just to incorporate the potential for rec market variations that are coming up. We have the clean energy standard legislation still being proposed at the federal level, again, which will require all load serving entities to achieve 4% emissions reductions year over year. So now it's, obviously that supply and demand in the rec market could introduce interesting price swings, as well as, incorporating the uncertainty that we see traditionally with the gas prices. I think taking the conservative approach and just keeping our current credit as 4 mils would probably be the safest bet. But I did want to call attention to that 8 mil calculation for consideration.
Okay, so the actual proposal on the table is to approve a generation and transmission adjustment to maintain it at the 4 mil value for the next 6 months.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, any board members have any questions or comments? Mr. Trippi?
No, I do not.
Okay, Ms. Lemieux?
No questions.
And Mr. Ruffolo?
Do we have any sense of what that means to the average bill, say the average monthly bill?
We have, so I have
It shouldn't
to
change because we're keeping it the same, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Mike, that's the rate since April 2019. It's been that
Okay.
4 mil credit. So
yeah.
Okay,
in 2019, you guys voted it to be that 4 mils for 12 months. And then in 2020, as the pandemic hit, we chose to make no adjustments. So now with revisiting the calculation and making sure that the formula is correct, we're most comfortable sticking with that 4 mil. So no bill change essentially. But we will revisit and make sure that the calculations are tracking accurately as we present to you in March for the April adjustment.
all right, thank you.
And just to answer your question, I could do the quick calculation. I forget, but as it's unchanged, you could see that credit on your bill month over month. I think that it would be on the order of $1 or $2, depending on your individual usage.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a motion from any of the board members to approve the The approval of the GTA is at 4 mil.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote to approve GTA of 4 mil. Mr. Trippy,
Yes.
Ms. Lemieux,
Yes.
Ms. Ruffolo,
Yes.
and Bob Holland, yes. Okay, that leads us to our final agenda item. The highlight that we always eagerly await is the general manager's highlights. Mr. Roy, turn the floor over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. So kind of trying to keep that general theme of the prior topics. We saw in the budget the variability of that monthly power supply expense with that snippet of a moment in time with a particular month. We have the GTA, which has to true up the costs that we incur after trying to do our best to forecast the weather 6 months out. And so starting with the legislative bits, I tried to call attention to just some of the legislative and news items that are out there relating to the upcoming markets to kind of add additional background and substance to those items we just discussed. And also being mindful that since we're only ramping into strategic electrification, that a lot of folks in town have natural gas for heating. So it's also, something that to keep in mind is we look at the energy portfolio of Shrewsbury as a whole and some of the opportunities we have to demonstrate our ability to provide a better service for some of these home heating options that otherwise folks don't normally consider. So one of the things here on the first one, you can see it's those big numbers, right? 25% potential increase on home heating bills on the natural gas side. Folks that heat with natural gas, and also as we talked about with some of the electric rates, 20% of our portfolio is natural gas generation. And so that's kind of that double whammy. There is a legal requirement that natural gas supplies go to home heating first. So that adds additional constraints on the generating side. But I wanted to call attention to that just because it's significant. And I apologize, I'm not sure SELCO specific figures, but one of my prior public power pride points was several years ago, we had the natural gas constraints over the winter, and we saw now, National Grid, Eversource raising rates 22%, 24%. I believe Public Power and Mass, if I remember my stats correctly, we implemented a GTA increase. And again, this was unprecedented, but we did a 9%. And so we were less than half of what all these other larger utilities were implementing for that gas line constraints. And that's largely due to our hedge strategy and some of our rate making principles that help smooth that curve. But one of the things here, I had to add in, and if you bear with my one editorial comment, is these rates go up, and if seeing this, National Grid raises its delivery charge in there as well. So I think having a forum like this, I've never been invited to weigh in on National Grid rate making, but it's a significant increase to be expected on the natural gas side. A couple other tidbits I threw in. I thought it was interesting with Eversource disputing the unpaid utility taxes. So just as a good community partner, that's a big advantage that we all know. So I know I'm not saying anything new here, but one of the things that I find interesting is with this IOU model here, we have a dispute of $44 million. And then if you look at some of these other bullet points about their penalties for their service in Connecticut, that $44 million that they're refusing to pay Springfield is basically just paying for a good chunk of the penalties that the Connecticut regulators are imposing upon them. So it's just an interesting shuffling of funding. But just other things, if you're interested, to go back and review those. The other one, because we're entering the winter, a lot of the activity is around gas. I threw in the tidbit with the National Grid executive leadership change, and I know we're Eversource here, but just to hammer home the point about on the gas side in Shrewsbury, not with this particular individual, but that is a utility in town. And we have no idea who these folks are managing these companies, and they're just coming in. And again, National Grid, I had to throw in this quote again because they're also with our neighbors and folks we engage with. National Grid is a company with close connections to the communities it serves and a long history of being on the leading edge in the industry. I live in a National Grid territory. I'm not sure they've even been to my town. But anyway, same thing, DPU announces final order of National Grid rates, something to just keep in mind because that impacts us. Just to hammer home another point that I wanted to remind myself of is, we are mindful as that community partner that everyone has a financial portfolio for their individual homes. So if they're getting strained on the National Grid side for heating, that will have an impact on their cable and electric payments as well. So we try and be there as a community partner and help folks as much as we can. And I think being aware of some of these upcoming price increases is just one element of that to help people plan and be ready for price spikes with their own bills that might not even be SELCO related. And then just on a couple other noteworthy topics I wanted to call attention to. I was fortunate to participate in a couple of calls here, one with Senator Bernie Sanders and the other with Representative Ann Custer. So Vermont and New Hampshire. Again, there's folks are tuned into the news. There's significant discussions going on with the infrastructure legislation. And again, that clean energy standard I referenced before. And it again continues to fascinate me just how, worthwhile it is to participate in those conversations and meet with the staffers and really take the feedback I receive about what's valuable to Shrewsbury and this group and convey that message to these folks so they can incorporate it with their discussions. But one of the things related to that I wanted to just highlight here that I think is a gap and something that we're working on is the cable side. So we operate, just for conversation's sake that everyone knows, but we operate two utilities that are very much normally separate entities, right? National Grid has nothing to do with, say, Charter. And so these two worlds collide. And so one of the things that as folks realize and evolve into the value of the public power telecommunications that Shrewsbury's been doing for decades reveals that we have a legislative gap with respect to protecting telecommunications at the legislative level. So we don't have an APPA or a NEPA or a local group to advocate in for our interests at the state level or the national level. And so one of the concerns that I noticed was ACA. So ACA is our federal level lobbying group, association, if you will, but their primary function is lobbying. And so the vast majority of their clientele are private, small to mid telecommunications providers. And so I started seeing noise and through some of these other advocacy efforts on the electric side, they started mentioning to me that there's discussions about limiting municipal telecommunications operations around the country, which is concerning to me because we are members of this ACA group, and if they're using our funds to lobby against the business model that we have, then I would not be supportive of that. So one of the things we're looking at, we had a nice meeting with them. It's a third of their membership base is municipal, but it's a very, those are the smallest clients, and so it's harder to get a significant say in that. So one of the things we're looking at is how do we make sure we maintain a voice at the State House in Massachusetts, and how do we maintain a voice in Washington, D.C. that is carrying the message and the values that are important to us in Shrewsbury. So that's just kind of what I wanted to mention there. And a couple other just noteworthy topics. The standard internet legacy cable package was removed several years ago. So that's, we're trying to finish out the transition of the folks that were grandfathered into that. And it's officially discontinued. So just as an FYI, and I have not heard of any, negative feedback to that effect. I think folks were understanding of that change. And then the other one, I just wanted to call attention to a couple of the HR related adjustments. In particular, we've made offers to an electrical engineer and broadband system administrator, just trying to, again, keep that team going and make sure we maintain that workforce resiliency that we're looking for. And just as another reminder, we've started the preparations for collective bargaining. That one, as you may recall, that one expires June of 22, but in an effort to move that up to be in coordination with our calendar and fiscal year, we're just shifting that up 6 months to have work towards a January 1 effective date. Then the other change in the highlights, and then I'll stop talking and getting long-winded. But with the IT, so one of the things we're working through IT here is to have better analytics and reporting capabilities to show where our activities are focused with the IT group. One of the things that certainly open to feedback, but we have our two primary external business units being electric and cable. But with IT is housed within SELCO, but we are essentially providing a service to a major external client as well, being the town services. So we want to make sure we're managing our customer service, if you will, the analytics, and all of the information they would need to make informed decisions with respect to their technology, as everything is rapidly advancing. So I threw in a couple pie charts. There's a lot more data behind this, but for the purposes of this report, I just threw in these two pie charts that they show some interesting data, just with the first one being the status of our tickets. So we're making good progress on making sure tickets are closed and responded to in a timely manner. And then the other interesting chart was the content of each ticket. So you can see the vast majority is other. I think a lot of those tickets are generated for really anything, whether someone is starting or leaving. Those can be categorized in other, but something to monitor is threat protection. Threat prevention. Spam. Those types of things that. We want to make sure those tickets are kept at a minimum as part of our cybersecurity efforts. Last two items, just covering a couple of the operational topics with, again, the ongoing pandemic that just seems like it's not can't get rid of it soon enough. We're impacted by the supply chain shortage with respect to transformers, a really key component to our electric operations. So we incorporated some of the lead times that we're seeing, including one, which is our primary manufacturer, ERMCO, that's not even accepting new orders. So we've had to make operational adjustments, including slowing down our 4 kV conversion efforts, which is transformer heavy, just to make sure we have the appropriate inventory available should a storm come through here. And and we need to have those units on reserve. So that's probably one of the biggest impacts we've seen from our supply chain issues that everyone sees on the news. And then broadband, I guess I'll just cover, in the interest of being more concise than I have been, fiber to the home, or the fiber project, if you will, is as you can see there, 98% complete. We have multiple contractors in town on any given day, so we're wrapping up. It's that 2%, those loose ends, those little things that to make sure they're all tied up and remedied for final payment. So that final 2 to 5% tends to be a slower slog than perhaps the initial push. So we're working through that, and we're hopeful that we'll have that wrapped up in the next month or so, and then in that same time frame issue bids for phase 2 construction as we move in that direction.
How's supply chain being affecting us on the fiber?
So good question. The fiber, so far we have procured ahead. We're trying to finalize the design to make sure that we continue staying ahead for what we need in the future. But in order to make those orders, we need to have the finalized design to get the appropriate footages. But so far, we don't, as it stands right now, we're in good shape to meet those anticipated construction deadlines for our upcoming bids, being the start of phase 2. But again, yes, they are impacted. We're just doing our best to stay ahead with the lead times that we're aware of. The other one, sorry, I read these again and I have to speak to all of them. I get excited, but over-the-top video is another one that we're moving quickly on, and certainly please, always open to feedback here. But one of the things that we're finding is that transition challenge between the coax system and the fiber system. And so, our video product and the coax-based set-top boxes are really at the end of life. And so we're seeing an increase in failure rates for equipment. And that equipment, it's that difficulty. And do we buy new equipment? What do we do? And so really we've gone through the process to evaluate, well, hey, even if we don't necessarily make a determination on the future of video products, what could we implement now that folks could use should their equipment fail, and as we transition folks to the fiber system. So these over-the-top solutions, we've evaluated three different approaches, and we're vetting their ability to integrate with our current provisioning systems, our billing systems, and some of our upcoming plans for software upgrades. So that's just something I'm happy to speak to more, but we're looking at in 2022 incorporating some budgetary figures for transitioning our set-top box experience for folks away from the aging traditional boxes as folks know it today. So I think I'll pause there. The rest are just data points I'm happy to address. And oh yes, and then the nice picture of Patrick. We have our first charging station pilot, if you will, at the service area garage. So that, again, part of that is the educational component as much as anything, to see what process it would take as we look at incorporating electric vehicles in the fleet, as we look at encouraging, and again, here I am getting long-winded, but a lot of those studies show EV adoption is heavily dependent on folks charging at home and at work. And as we're also an employer, some of this is piloting what mechanisms we could put in place to incentivize not just other people within Shrewsbury to adopt EVs, but those that also work here. and incorporate some of those concepts as an employer, not just a utility. So that's some of the background behind that picture with Patrick. Yeah.
Any of the board members have any questions for Christopher? Mr. Trippy?
No, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Lemieux?
Questions?
And Mr. Ruffolo?
Nothing for me. I'd like a reporting on sometime in the future on what services we provide to other towns. So I know there's some, I don't know, there's some integration or inter-affiliated or whatever the right term is for what we do for other towns.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the only question I have is, when we put these chargers in place, is there a method to extract payment for the use of our chargers? Right now, it looks like these are ones that are being put in like in service areas where we wouldn't charge because we'd be using them ourselves. But is there a methodology by which we'll be doing it when we put them up at the schools?
Absolutely. So our integrated resources team and the engineering team worked in a collective effort to determine the best, the optimum piece of equipment for installations like that. Absolutely. So there's two key components to that evaluation. One being the software. So not just for setting the pricing model, as we anticipate, the use of time of use pricing in coordination with the AMI project. There's that pricing structure, but there's also the data analytics, because driving adoption of some of these technologies involves as much intelligence as we can get about how folks leverage this infrastructure. So the equipment that the group is evaluating is what capabilities does the software have? Does it integrate with our virtual peaker platform that we leverage through our MWIC, currently branded the HELPS program, as well as some of the logistical components of reliability, cord storage and things like that, so we maintain maximum uptime. So the shortest answer is yes, absolutely. We're just looking at, what is the best fit for Shrewsbury, both for a level 2 and level 3.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just don't want to leave these things set up like at the schools and all of a sudden after hours have people just plugging in.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. With that said, do we have a motion I think we've gotten all the reporting. We don't have to approve or accept your report, but a couple of things I would like to touch bases before we move to adjourn is that I will sign the warrant for all of the board members as we have in the past due to the pandemic. So that make that happen. We didn't address that when we talked about the warrants. And finally, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, 16 November 2021 at 7:30 a.m. So that's Tuesday, 16 November 2021 at 7:30 a.m. Do we have a motion? Any other comments by anyone? No? Okay. With that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Any second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote to adjourn. Mr. Trippy.
Yes.
Ms. Lemieux.
Yes.
Mr. Ruffolo.
Yes.
Okay. And Bob Holland, we adjourn at 8:14 a.m. Thank you very much. Thanks all.
Yep.